liberate also the creativity of this discussion by inviting more people
Yes.
for the panel.
Into
So
the tent.
let's invite Mike and Irakli on stage. Hello, Mike. Hello,
Hey.
Irakli.
Hey.
There's a couple of creative people. Hey, guys.
Yeah, a couple of creative people there. Just also to say for people who will see the panel, we also asked some female potential speakers to attend. They were not available, so there. But just to we have this Women API program. We really tried, but let's say no one was available. At least in the people we tried to. But yes, we're really glad to have you, Irakli, Mike, Matt, and I. We also had invited Eric, also who is. Like the old API Academy members, right? At the time, we all wrote books together, right? So there's also one reason for us to all be there. So, yeah, I think the last time we were all in the same room was like five years,
Oh yeah,
4 years ago. So
I've
we're
lost all
actually
sense of time.
too long. But yeah, so again, as I said, in Paris, we will invite you to be there. So we'll try to solve that issue. But for now, within the last time we met all together, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. What does have changed except our job positions?
What's changed? What's not changed?
Yeah.
in the
That's
last
a
4 or
shorter
5
list.
years.
Let's in API space, at least in
Yeah.
in this industry, we're loving and fighting to see it continue in a good way, at least. What has that changed? Is the culture have changed really? Is it the peak, like the API economy we have been talking about over the last 15 years? Is it really coming now? Is it this year? So yeah.
I don't know. Well, I'll just volunteer that, to talk seriously about this. In the last several years, when I just look at this event and I look at other API Days events and other events around the globe, I see so much more talk about design, so much more talk about products, so much more talk about business, all in the same API, under the same API banner. To me, that's a big change. That's a cultural change. This track here, right, is talking about bringing more people under the tent, to use in Matt's example, to really think about who else can contribute in meaningful ways. And I think that's a big difference. And I think that's reflected in some of the training and some of the advice, and it's starting to get reflected in the tooling. I think tooling, as ever, is way behind, but that's what I see. I see a lot more business than I used to.
I see the same.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to back up. I see the same. It could be personal bias, but based on who I'm talking to these days, but definitely, and seeing some good returns as well for companies who are down that curve. But yes, Irakli.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. And one of the things that I have seen, obviously there is significant switch over to more loosely coupled interfaces, right? So GraphQL is definitely a way bigger player than what, like 5 years ago, it was like all about REST. But also, I see a lot of move away from APIs. I see in my space, a lot of work is moving to data streams. So it's not all about the single vendor, but like Kafka has kind of become the de facto representation of the API streams, data streams. And honestly, a lot of things that we would do before with APIs are now done as Kafka streams. So Avro, Kafka, those things are replacing some areas where APIs would be seen traditionally.
But so you're saying that an event-based interaction is not an API?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the way we express the interfaces has evolved, and it's not all about the RESTful APIs anymore.
Yeah. I definitely see there's a huge increase in people I talk to asking about experimenting with event-driven services and streaming services. And one of the things that keeps coming up is there's a lot more understanding about the passage of time. When you do these streaming things, you realize things are always happening at some place, somewhere. You have to deal with the idea of concurrency and eventual consistency and all these other things that are much more abstract. And I think that's definitely a change as well. And I think that's one of the reasons, Irakli, you would know this more than than I, because you're right there. Streams sort of force us to rethink the way the world works, right? Is that right? Do you think about it that way?
I do, because one of the things I think it represents is moving from client server, which is fundamental RESTful APIs, more into broadcast, right? So I publish something on a stream, that's a broadcast. That does change the nature of communication. So you're absolutely right. That's why I find it pretty interesting.
Cool.
Is it the story of software, like, from synchronous to asynchronous to synchronous again and asynchronous again, and also this monolith versus services versus monolith again versus services again and microservices again, right? So it seems like it's just a new era. We're going for 20 years of this, and in 20 years we will say, oh, we have this new technology that gathers everything, that makes polling so much more efficient, right? So, and asynchronous is to whatever, it will happen like that.
I think so. I mean, I think I've tried to look at this, because it's not like event driven is new, right? Like maybe Kafka's relatively new, and being able to do event streaming at a higher scale, more immediacy, that's obviously getting better and better. But I think, like, I always look at the integration world. There's these three interaction patterns: queries, where you're not changing state; commands, where you've got this coordination happening, where someone's saying, go change the state, I'll wait, let me know when it's done; and then the events, which are more post state change. And I don't think it's possible to model everything over events because of that. It's just that you start modeling those queries and commands over an event architecture. So I don't know. I'm still the opinion that you're going to need it all, and then it depends what you're optimizing for. I think one thing, though, specifically on event driven, is it's good. There's so much maturity and robustness around the metadata side of RESTful APIs. It's great to see async API kind of becoming more popular in the event driven space. But Irakli, in that sort of transformation you're seeing, like, are people going back to square one with Kafka, or are they embracing async API and kind of leveraging some of the goodness that could be transferred from our RESTful API world?
No, it is definitely about event driven, and I don't think that synchronous is getting squeezed out. I think that synchronous is still very much something that you need for certain use cases. But another thing that I think is happening, or I see happening, is for the synchronous payloads, people are becoming more comfortable generally with like eventual consistency, asynchronous, stream-based in certain areas. And in the areas where you cannot be comfortable with it, things are getting really tight. So for the synchronous use cases, the budget for latency is getting smaller and smaller. So that's also very interesting to observe, because what that means that some of those intermediary solutions concepts like hybrid cloud, you can have some things running on-prem, some things running in the like public cloud, is becoming increasingly problematic, right? Because if you're trying to squeeze the execution of something in 100 milliseconds, and you're spending like 80 of that in interconnectivity of public cloud with private cloud, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, this I think we've talked about this before. Time suddenly becomes an architectural element in your design, right? Like, this is going to cost me time. This is going to be far away. This is going to take time to resolve. That's going to change the way I decide what technology to use. And I think one of the advantages of the newer breeds of event-driven systems is they're so much more effective and efficient with time. I think that's one of the reasons we're doing them more often. I know I've talked about this at API Days before, that we're going to eventually be leading into this autonomic space where it's not just autonomy, but systems sort of take care of themselves. We've taken a couple of runs at this, to use Matt's example of sort of cyclical. And I think when you're trying to keep an equilibrium, when you're trying to balance things, you need a short window of time for these events. Whether you're managing devices like temperature sensors or motion detectors or anything like that, or just trying to do trades on a market, or just keep track of customer orders, you're going to have to kind of have a system that knows how to keep a balance and stay healthy on its own, that's totally event driven. Even if I do commands, sort of like, changing the way the system works, I'm going to have to wait for the feedback from all those events to figure out if it's right. So I think we're inevitably getting into that space, and time is of the essence so much more than it used to be.
And just for the I don't know if it's a fun story or not, but I was talking to an enterprise architect where we're talking about time and efficiency, and he said, and I was asking to him like, what's your top performance about messaging, and where when you get communication, and say, oh, we're the fastest possible, and say, okay, what it is, like 10 milliseconds? Say, no, it's long. I say, one? Say, no, less than 1 millisecond, really, like 100 microseconds? Say, like, no. Say, like 0? He said, no, below that 0. Say, how do you do that?
Below 0.
Actually, they are provisioning potential next actions.
Yeah.
They are provisioning potential next actions, so it can be as fast as possible. They're caching it. So actually, we are below 0. We have the next action already provisioned in the app. So actually, even if there is an offline connection or whatever, so he tricked me at least on this one. But I agree with you.
No. It's predictability, right? They're making predictions now, and they're staging their predictions. It's like arbitrage. It's like, well, I'll be prepared for these 3 or 4 possibilities, and whichever one comes up, I've already got the package done for it, right? And that's optimization at a completely different level. That's actually how our brains work, right? We sort of predict what the other person's going to do. Like when two people are walking and they kind of bump into each other, lousy prediction, right? Oops, okay, they're going to do this. So this is getting into the computing space, and I love it.
I knew you were going to say that, Mike. I predicted it.
There you go. See, there you go.
Yeah, that's good. Let's say on the business side, just a few things. Many over the last 5 years, many regulations: open banking, open insurance, personal data like GDPR, CCPA, COLOPA, VCDPA in the US. Like now, Utah has a privacy regulation. We have the FIRE, the HIPAA, the whatever. All are pushing at some point APIs, right? APIs or API protocols. We have a lot of open source tooling. API management has been a commodity. Like it has changed a lot. Now, API security solutions are saying that API gateways are obsolete. A lot of things have changed. I will ask you, also on your side, did you see a mindset change also? Why I'm saying that is because at least in Europe, we have so many new API product managers who are junior. They are junior. They are just out of school. They are promoted API product manager, where 7 years ago, it was a 10 years old, let's say, in the industry, architects or product manager. Like it seems even the knowledge on APIs is a commodity, at least, even on the business side. Do you feel it?
Well, I was going to actually tee off on the security thing, which is that in spite of all that, the API security mindset is still, that's the thing that hasn't evolved nearly enough, right? Like we still see it, we can scream about it all day. Like, you got to protect things, and just, we still see breaches all the time. And I just, so maybe that's because we have too many junior product managers. I don't know, but I doubt it because it's been there forever.
I'll just say 2 things. I don't think we have enough regulation, and the regulations that we have aren't enforced. So this goes into AI and machine learning, as well as all the other kinds of prediction, which is evolving around security and everything else. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. In terms of mindset, I definitely see a new crop of people when I'm talking to companies. There are people who know a lot about product management, but not so much about APIs. But they're going to be in charge of an API catalog. They're going to be product managers of a suite of products. This is an entirely new set of skills, an entirely new set of people. And I definitely see much more of that when I visit companies than I did a few years ago. And I think that's an excellent trend. I think it's a fantastic trend, which brings us closer to creating the kinds of products and services that are really needed, that have a real business value, not just a technical success.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty pessimistic in this area. So I see a lot of performative things being done. And I think some of the regulations that just added the warnings about cookies, but basically you're giving up the same rights. You just need to now click on several pop-ups, but the end result is the same. It's not really helping anybody, right? And this is not the only example. I think there are a lot of that get done in technology and all social problems that we have in our society today. There's a lot of performance, but very little real change. And I think in technology specifically, it cannot happen if technology companies themselves do not try to change things, right? If we are all about like profits and today's gains, this won't change. Like some law somewhere written by some lawyers,
Yeah.
not going to change. You must want to change, right? Even if it affects your short-term profits, because you have to be able to see the bigger picture. And I would like to believe that in the past, in the world, we used to have the leaders who were able to step up that way and do things like that. And we seem to be lacking those kind of leaders. And unless you genuinely are trying to change, somebody forcing you, yeah, some laws are necessary, but it will not lead to the genuine change, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
Mehdi?
someone said earlier, it's the difference between to adapt to the API revolution, change, whatever, or to adopt the API mindset, right? To adapt to or to adopt, that's the difference. One is just like it's driven by the outside, one is driven in by the inside. So yeah, at least from Apidays, we see so many new companies who are they claim 4,000, 5,000 APIs, even if sometimes they just endpoints, but they call them APIs at least. But but at least here we see like the movement is there, right? It's like the peak oil, but I think we're the peak API, right? At least from what you see on API days, we have never seen so much API project, API people, and API jobs opening and stuff like that.
Definitely.
I was going to say, I think I agree with what Irakli said, but it's pretty fundamental societal barriers, right, to overcome to fight that dynamic. If there's a glimmer of hope, maybe it's that the freedom of choice that consumers may have as a result of all this stuff going on, perhaps like I kind of think in a very heavily capitalistic economy and society that we're in, that consumer activism maybe is more powerful than any other type of activism. But just to go back to what Mike was saying about the product managers, I think one of those, and I know you guys, Mehdi and Mike, you wrote the book or Continuous API Management, talking about product management and saying like one of the things is, hey, it's just product management. I think one of the things that comes out of these people with a product management background is, we like to talk about APIs as products, but actually it's more like they're products that just happen to be API centered.
Yeah.
And like Mike, you and I have the podcast where we talk to a lot of these startups in the API space. And it seems like it's not like they necessarily go into it saying, we're going to build an API product. They go in saying, we're going to build a product.
Yeah.
And it just happens that the API is kind of the core, but then they build all this other supplemental stuff around it. And so I think that we may be at peak API, Mehdi, but in terms of digital products, I think that there's still lots and lots of ceiling there.
Yep.
Yeah, but so many new investors are pushing this idea. We invest only in API products companies, or so now they seems like they've seen some successful companies, and now they're really like the landscape we do on APIs. Like they ask like specific explanation and stuff. Like it seems like it seems at least we see a peak of the hype, but maybe it's the final plateau of productivity, right? The final plateau the hype was in the 2010s, right? The RPG, the mastery, whatever. Then we had the big how they call it again?
The trough of disillusionment. Yeah.
The
trough.
And so finally it has been growing a little bit like that over and over.
Could be. I'm sure there's money chasing tech, right? There's money chasing product all the time. And I think to go back to what Irakli was talking about, I think one of the challenges is just in the time I've been doing this kind of work, the cycle of how long I'll wait before, how patient I'll be as an investor. That's gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And in the long run, I don't think that's good, right? I think what happens is we get to the point where we're just looking to turn a buck rather than make a change. And that can be really, really scary. So I think we definitely have to fight that. I don't know how, but I think that's another part of the story as well, which is what are the sustainable items that go over a long period of time? What are the changes that we're involved in, that all of us, listening here are involved in every single day, that are going to have a long-term effect? And those long-term effects, to me, are always more interesting and, to me, more important than the short-term effects.
Yeah, let's say, but at least Marshall van Alstein this morning, he made a great research on reverting the firm with APIs. He said that there's more value outside the company than inside.
Yeah.
So opening APIs, you will be able to collect more value, more channels, more whatever. So he said, yeah, and he showed that by the numbers, companies who have opened public APIs actively have been accumulating a lot more value. But the thing is, actually, it's the winners are on the long term. Facebook, Google, these companies have been run by the founders for a really long time. They were seeing the long term since the beginning, right? Stripe,
Right.
the founders are still there. So actually, the winners are maybe the one who adopt the API mindset, but also who understand the long term, right? And
Yes.
it's like exponential. You get so much more value when you wait, right? And the more you wait, the more you get value. Shopify or Adobe, or at the end, people who invested on a long time, I think, at the end, the winners.
Yeah, I think the sort of putting APIs aside, but they're a very great conduit into the digital ecosystem. I think the really understanding the value flow and kind of the value network ideas, and I know Marshall's done a lot of work in that area, kind of the original Christensen sort of thinking. There's some great work done by a couple guys in the Netherlands, value engineers. That's, to me, I've been working with companies using that type of approach of saying, like, where's your value? What value are you creating? What value are you distributing? What value are you capturing? And there's actually a company, I think, in Belgium that has a game they created around this. Like, they literally have a game board where you can have little value currencies. But that's when we talk about the API. Yeah.
So there's a sort of a monopoly of
Yes,
APIs,
a value exchange. A value exchange. Yeah, I gotta find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my colleagues at Jonathan Lanosina in Salesforce introduced this to me because I was describing. I said,
Cool.
thinking about maybe we should gamify this approach, and he said, "Well, have a look at this."
Cool.
So, yeah, I'll share the link on that afterwards. But like it's actually a massive strategy tool to say, okay, to your point, Mehdi, and to Marshall's talk, where's all the value out there? How can I capture it? What am I going to exchange to capture that value? How am I going to create more value from it? That's the game. I mean, APIs are just sort of a conduit in the game, but I think there's a lot to be done there. And I think just because of the immediacy of how quickly we can exchange information in the digital economy and how cheap it is if we're web connected, I think that's why we're in a totally different era of business.
So it seems like I took all of us in a little bit of a dark spot with my pessimism about social problems and our solutions to that. So I want to pivot from that. And one of the things I do genuinely believe about APIs, I really think we're at the inflection point, right? So the last 10 plus years have been, there's some magic about APIs. Let's API-fy everything. Just invented a new word, right? So let's make everything into APIs. So it was all about more APIs, the better. But now I think we're getting to the point where, we have a lot of APIs, right? And the consumer appetite for waiting, this value of time, like everything needs to be instantaneous, is really hitting us. So I think soon enough, we're going to start seeing some really interesting things about how we treat interfaces, right? I wouldn't even call them necessarily APIs anymore, where we really start to understand how modularization works, where you want to put things together versus where you want to put them separately, where you do want to actually do orchestration, where you want to put things like vertically integrated. So I think we are now at the point that we have seen enough APIs that we're starting to learn to be very efficient with them. We're not there yet, but I think some really, really interesting things will come out in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I definitely see that as well. A lot of the customers I'm talking to are asking me about the topic that comes up is composability, workflow, orchestration, choreography, however you want to talk about it. And I think we may have like a lot of bottled up or pent up demand in this space. And like you said, we could have some really creative breakout ideas that have a lot to do with how we actually can build new things with just the interfaces, how we design on interfaces rather than just services. I think you're right.
So we have 1 minute to wrap up. If every one of us wants to take a last word about last word, not last world, last word about the topic. Yeah, what we would like people to remember about the last 5 years and maybe the next 5.
Okay. Data is coming. The whole, everything that we've seen happen in the distributed application world, all the machine learning insights, analytics, there's going to be a tsunami of that coming into our API world. That's my future look.
I'll volunteer. I'll just repeat what I just said. I think it's all about composability. I think that reusability hasn't happened yet, and it's going to happen, and it'll be a major productivity kicker. It'll be great.
Yeah, I think the analogy with machine learning, data science is very apt, because just like in that space where there were like decades of people investing in, but nothing really happening, and then all that exploded because now you had the critical mass of knowledge. We've been investing in having everything turned into APIs for quite a number of years, and I think the time is coming when it will reach the critical mass where we will see fundamentally different uses of that inventory of APIs and the knowledge.
Cool.
Yeah, on my side, I would say broadcast everywhere and catch the streams. I would say, and I would say, yeah, I think that's the mindset, right? All channels is 360 degrees, like spheric even channels. Like don't reduce yourself to only what you can have, but like invest in people what they can receive, not only in what you can deliver.
Okay.
It was great to be with you again virtually, and again in Paris. We will do everything we can to have you all in the same place, right? So yeah, thank you very much, Mike, Irakli, Matt, for being with us and participate to Apidays Interface.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mehdi.
Thank you very much.